Hello and welcome. In today's video, I was invited by Camille to talk about the current progress of the Eden project, show some comparisons with other emulators, and also comment on a few games that used to be problematic but are now running smoothly. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. And this month, Instant Gaming is offering a great discount on the newly released Monster Hunter Wilds, with up to 51% off, ensuring the lowest historical price for the game. Check out the price comparison with Steam's pricing. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. First of all, let's clear up a question that many people still have. Is Eden going to be available only for Android? The answer is no. There will be versions for Windows, Android, and Linux, including compatibility with the Steam Deck, and it's also possible that, in the future, we'll see a version for some Apple devices. However, while the team does have that intention, there's currently no estimate for when that might happen. The second question a lot of people still have is, when will Eden be released? Right now, it feels like we're getting closer and closer, but the truth is, and this is something I've discussed with other team members, launching it at this point would still be a bit premature. And then you might be asking yourself, if it's still premature, why is Eden thinking about launching anyway? The answer lies in the community. It's not just you or me wanting to unwind after a long day and enjoy our favorite games. There's massive pressure coming from the entire Nintendo Switch emulation scene, and I'm not just talking about players, but also other developers and even influencers. Speaking of dates, it's possible that in a week or two, we'll have a public Discord server where anyone can join, follow the project up close, and chat directly with the people involved. That's a pretty strong sign that we're getting very close to moving out of the alpha phase and into beta. But before you keep pushing for daily updates, I just want to ask, from the heart, please understand that there are real people behind this project. Camille, J. Pikachu, Mr. Purple, and the other devs have barely been sleeping. They're giving it their all to deliver something of real quality. Like anyone else, they have their good days and bad ones. But the goal is crystal clear. Eden is not going to be just another generic fork. And if you can hold on just a bit longer, I promise it'll be worth the wait. Oh, and if you want to help support the project directly, Mr. Purple is going through a tough time financially. If you're able to support him, I'll leave his PayPal link in the video description. And if you make any contribution, just send me your Discord nickname. I'll give you a special role as a thank you for helping out. Now let's talk about the new and exclusive features available in Eden. A good example is the new cache function called LRU. In some of my tests, I gained between 6 to 8 FPS in games that usually run at 30 FPS. That's a significant improvement. However, this feature is still under development, and not all games are compatible with it yet. The same goes for the shader backend. Thanks to that implementation, it finally became possible to play Mario Kart 8 on Android without the excessive stuttering that used to happen. Speaking specifically about the Android version, there's a settings tab called Eden Veil, where you can find all these new implementations. This includes texture compression to BC1 and BC3 formats, something that previously only existed on the Windows version, and was even falsely advertised in Uzi, along with a RAM management mode, which helps a lot on lower-end devices. Just by showcasing all of this, it's clear that Eden is not just another fork. It brings unique features and real improvements that promise to positively impact gameplay across a wide range of devices. Of course, even with all these exciting updates, some of these features still cause regressions that need to be refined to give you, the end user, the best possible experience during your leisure time. There are some issues with anti-aliasing in specific games and also with certain API backends, which sometimes take hours, or even days, to be rewritten properly. Before we get into the game tests, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoy this type of content. And if this is your first time here on the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with everything firsthand. Now, getting into performance testing, let's start with this one, Bayonetta 3. This game has been running well for a while now, but in the latest versions of Citron, Sadachi, and Ryubing, which never fixed the issue, there was a regression. The cutscenes went back to having desynchronization problems. In Eden, however, not only is the performance excellent, but all cutscenes are perfectly synced, as you can both see and hear now. compared directly with the latest version of Citron, performance is very similar. It's worth remembering that at its peak, Citron offered very solid performance. So we can confidently say that Eden, in its current stage, already matches the best that Citron was capable of delivering. And for the first time, outside of Cemu, which was practically a dedicated emulator for this game, Zelda Breath of the Wild ran at nearly 100 FPS. I've tested this game on several other emulators, but none of them delivered such solid performance. So I can say with confidence that, at least for Breath of the Wild, Eden has already exceeded my expectations. Dragon Ball Kakarot, which still had performance drops on both Windows and Android, now shows no specific issues at all in my tests. On the other hand, while it is already possible to run Dragon Ball FighterZ using a hack, the Eden development team is close to making that hack unnecessary, allowing users to enjoy the game to its fullest. In 1v1 battles this is already possible, but in 3v3 battles, the game still has a few issues if you try to run it without the hack. Shadow Generations, the game included in the Sonic Generations pack, still experiences random crashes on some emulators, especially on Ryujinx forks, where, sooner or later, it ends up closing on its own. This issue had already been fixed by Torzu and later implemented in Citron, as long as the CPU accuracy was set to accurate. In Eden, the stability remains the same as Citron and Torzu, but look at the performance I achieved here, nearly 120 stable FPS. This is because I used a mod to limit the game to 120 FPS. If I had used the mod for 240 FPS, which would be ideal for benchmarks, the stability would have been compromised again. Even so, I must admit I was pleasantly surprised by this result. Now, let's talk about the highly anticipated Tears of the Kingdom, which at first I thought would be impossible to run well, maintaining the game above 60 FPS in real conditions, with environmental exploration, shaders being compiled, and combat. All of this is now a reality. It wasn't the best performance I got among all the emulators tested. I admit Ryujinx performs excellently on AM5 processors. However, if we consider overall stability and gameplay fluidity, Eden is on an excellent path. While Ryujinx delivers more FPS, it takes longer to compile shaders, which ends up slightly hindering gameplay. And honestly, for a single-player game like this, I don't see the need to go above 60 FPS. You just end up using more power and putting more strain on your hardware. Comparing with other emulators, I tested Citron against Eden, and here I saw a small gain of 3 FPS in favor of Eden. It may seem like a small difference, but keep in mind, Eden is still actively being developed. We also have some gameplay footage captured on the Steam Deck, thanks to jaimeanime. Thanks again for sending the recordings. He used an external camera, so the image might look a bit blurry, as it wasn't captured with a capture card. Even so, in my preliminary analysis, the performance looks excellent. All games were run at 1080p, including Tears of the Kingdom, and the most impressive part, everything was tested on a device with factory settings, with no modifications to the Steam Deck. The first game tested was Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. The performance is great, with a solid 60 FPS, no shader or performance issues. System resource usage was around 30%, which indicates excellent battery consumption, ideal for those who want to play for longer periods. Mario Luigi Brothership was also tested, and as expected, the performance is excellent. Unlike previous forks, there are no graphical glitches either in the characters nor in the stages, whether during gameplay or cutscenes. If I'm not mistaken, this game is running with mods, as it was originally locked at 30 FPS. Either way, the gameplay is perfect. Super Mario Odyssey was also tested, an essential title for anyone who loves the Nintendo Switch. And, as expected, the gameplay was flawless. Splatoon 3 is one of the hardest games to emulate, both on Windows and Android, due to its physics, engine, and complex controls. It took a long time before this game was considered playable on Yuzu. But here, in Eden, the performance was completely smooth on the Steam Deck, with a steady 60 FPS and no stuttering. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was also tested on the Steam Deck and showed gameplay above 30 FPS with great graphic quality. From what I analyzed, the game really pushes the portable to its limits, utilizing nearly all of the GPU's capacity. The result is even better than the Switch itself, which struggles to run this title, with frequent drops to 20 FPS. These were all the games tested by jaimeanime. Overall, the results on the Steam Deck were, at least for me, better than expected. This handheld device proves to be a great option for those who want to play Switch titles without actually owning a Nintendo console. Plus, it offers portability for travel and activities outside the house, all while enjoying your favorite games. Now, let's get to the Android version, which is the cherry on top. It's definitely the most polished version at the moment. And in my honest opinion, even though it hasn't been officially released yet, it's already the best option for playing Nintendo Switch games on Android. One of the most positive aspects I can highlight is the texture compression, the fine-tuned RAM management, and thermal control. During my tests, which lasted over 2 hours, with an ambient temperature of 24 degrees Celsius, in a small room with no air conditioning, the device never exceeded 35 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, I couldn't test battery management, as I need to keep the charger connected for the capture card to work. I also need to mention the work of the wizard Mr. Purple, who developed drivers aimed at providing the greatest possible compatibility with Eden. Only with them was I able to achieve the experience you're seeing in the background, with Super Mario Odyssey running at almost 60 fixed FPS, without issues with the grass or other environmental elements. No disrespect to the other drivers, but this one was the most compatible in my tests. I'm not sure if he's already released this driver on Telegram, but it also offers enhanced compatibility with other projects. I even started using it with Azahor as well. Now, moving on to highlights from the Android version. Burnout Paradise already ran very well, but the gameplay you're seeing is at 1080p, and it could have gone even further, as I did with Need for Speed, which I'll show shortly. Overall, the resource consumption is moderate, even during crashes with particles and visual effects. So this is a game that will run on practically any device. As a fan of the franchise, I can guarantee the experience is great. We start with a game that didn't run on any other project, as it would crash randomly even on Windows: Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. During this capture, I played for about 30 minutes, including initial cutscenes and some gameplay, and the game stayed completely stable, with no graphical issues. Enter Magnolia is another game that didn't run well on almost any emulator. Although the graphical issues have already been fixed on Windows, there are still some minor visual bugs on Android, but I must say this was specific to the build I tested. In an earlier build, sent by J Pikachu, these issues weren't present, so I believe it's a temporary regression that should be fixed by the time of release. Monster Hunter Stories 1 and 2 had serious performance issues in previous forks, mainly in towns, due to the number of NPCs and objects. Now both run very well, with excellent performance and very few graphical issues, just a few minor defects while compiling shaders, which is acceptable. I've already added these 2 games to my library to play in the future. One of the biggest miracles Eden has performed was with Mario Kart 8. Currently, it's necessary to change a setting in the shader backend, but the team is already working to improve that. Even so, the gameplay no longer suffers from those classic stutters during races and remains stable most of the time. Of course, there are still small stutters during shader compilation, but nothing that harms the experience. Comparing with Sudachi and Citron, on Sudachi, stutters are much more frequent, and after about a minute of gameplay, the game simply crashed. In other attempts, Sudachi even froze the device and restarted on its own, an old bug that unfortunately still hasn't been fixed. As promised, here's a capture of Need for Speed: Hot Pursuit Remastered running at 1440p. From the result, I might have been able to increase the resolution even more, but I preferred not to take the risk. Even at a resolution not recommended for most games, I was able to run it without graphical or performance issues. Have you managed to run any Switch games at 1440p on your Android? Another game that recently appeared on Android, and of course, Eden brought a sensational gameplay, is Princess Peach Showtime. At the moment, it's still necessary to set the video emulation accuracy to high, or the game may break right after the initial cutscene or even at the title screen. But once adjusted, we get solid 30 FPS, with no graphical issues. One of the biggest surprises I had was with Super Mario Odyssey, my favorite game on the Switch, and also many of the Eden team's favorite. This game received special attention, especially with Mr. Purple's driver. Now, the grass problems and ghosting effects during rapid camera movements have been fixed. But it wasn't just the driver that helped. Comparing with other emulators, Citron also manages to maintain the game at 60 FPS during several moments. But the stutters are more frequent, giving that occasional stuttering sensation. Sudachi, on the other hand, presents the lowest frame rate among the three, even dropping to around 30 FPS at some points. The conclusion I've come to is that, even with a great driver like Mr. Purple's, the emulation project needs to be stable enough to maintain performance, even in hardware-demanding situations. Finally, if you watched the last video about Eden and saw some minor issues in Zelda Breath of the Wild, know that, as you can see now, most of them have already been fixed. The game now offers one of the best performances among emulators. And you might be wondering, what about Tears of the Kingdom? Unfortunately, as many of you know, this game, just like Red Dead Redemption, is still one of the most problematic to run on my device. In this specific build, I couldn't get it to work, but in earlier versions of Eden, I was able to play for over 15 minutes straight before deciding to close the game. That was the longest gameplay I've managed so far in Tears of the Kingdom on Android. And that was the video. I hope you liked it, and if you can, leave a like, share it, and I'll see you in the next one.